Hello there once again, YouTubers. Today we're going to do a top end rebuild on one of these KTM 50s. This is a 2019, but with the same scenario for a 2013 to a 2020 to the current model. There's a few steps, but if you take your time, you will get it right. Let's get straight into it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is remove the exhaust. So to do that, we've got an 8mm bolt here. We're going to remove. And then we've got these two springs right here, 1, 2. I'm going to show you a tip. So this second one, I've put a cable tie through there. I'm going to go just like that. Cable tie makes it a lot easier. So remove these two springs and remove this nut behind that mount. So now what we do is get the exhaust like this and just give him a nice little wiggle. Now she comes, just like that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to drain the coolant. That's done by removing this 8mm head bolt there. What I'm going to do, these bikes take 700ml of coolant. I've got a 1 litre jug. I'm going to place it underneath so we can catch most of the coolant. Now, before we do this, we're going to remove the radiator cap, which is on the opposite side radiator. So I'm just going to crack the nut, like that. It wasn't hard to do. I'm going to take it off the socket. I'm going to put my jug underneath, rest it there, and I'm going to wind this out. Let the coolant, here it comes. And there we go. So we're catching most of the coolant there. Still a little bit more coming. Done pretty well, I haven't lost much at all. So we've only had about 500ml come out, so we've probably got about roughly 200ml left, left in the hoses there. We need to remove these plastic radiator fins. To do that, let's get a screwdriver. Just going to poke it in like this. Bit of help with the other hand, and just push him out as such. Same down the bottom. Then we can just pull it out like that. Now we do the same to the opposite side radiator. We're now going to remove the seat. This is a counterclockwise turn, like this. And then we're going to remove this 8mm bolt, 8mm socket. We're now going to make sure the fuel is off. And we're going to pull off this tube from the back of the petcock there. A little bit of fuel might come out, so don't be too alarmed. There we go. A little bit of... Now we just take out this breather hose and the fuel tank should look straight off. Just like that. Okay, so now we're going to remove the radiator hoses. So we're going to loosen these hose clamps. So once the hose clamps loosened, the hoses come off reasonably well, just like that. So we need to remove that one, this one, and that one to get it out of the way for us. So we removed these three, and now we can remove this radiator. So 2 8mm bolts to remove that. On this side, we just need to remove this one here, then remove this hose, and we should be able to take the radiator away once we remove the mounting bolts. Now we're going to remove the spark plug cap. Just give it a twist. Enough, I'm sure you'll know that. Okay, so now we're going to remove the cylinder head. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 10mm bolts. Now just be aware there's these tiny little copper washers underneath the bolts on top of the head there. So some of the bolts will take them with them. You know, they'll come out with the bolts, some will stay there. So like this one back here, just remember it's there. So now we're going to remove the head. There you go, straight off. Bit of coolant there with it. Okay, so now the cylinder head's off. I'm going to take the barrel or the cylinder off. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 nuts there to take off. 10mm socket will do it. And we'll just take them off gradually to last one around here. Okay, so now they're all loosened, we can just whip them off. So to remove the cylinder, it can get a bit tight. What you definitely don't want to do is put a screwdriver between there and the crankcase. Do not do that. You can't scratch the bottom of that cylinder or the crankcase. So if it is a bit tight, you can give it a couple of little taps with a rubber mallet. Just like that, no harder, and then it should come off. So I think mine's become pretty loose. Yep, and we're just going to slowly maneuver it up. Here it comes. Slowly bring it up. Just like that. And you remember, when it comes up, you definitely don't want to drop anything into the crankcase. Put my hand below the piston there. Bring up the cylinder. There we go. There's the cylinder and the piston there, which is quite black on top. So it looks like running a bit rich. I'm going to take the gasket off. There we go, there's the gasket. There's the rag. So I'm going to shove the rag in, just like that. We actually don't need a very big rag at all with these 50s. The room there is very, very small. Very small, but we're going to shove it in like that. So nothing can possibly get into that case, because as you'll see soon, it's going to get a little bit fiddly. So now we want to remove this little circlip. This little man right here. Right there. He needs to come out. So that's what holds the gudgeon pin in. And these things do fly out when they get removed. They're quite difficult to get out, even harder to get in, to put the new ones in. We never reuse these, never reuse the Circlips. There he comes. They came out quite well. That's him there. So now I've got one circlip out. From the opposite side, I can push the gudgeon pin out. Just got a little punch I'm using here, and I'm just going to push it out, just like that. That's coming out quite well. There we go. Get a little bit more. There we go. Has come out. This is why it's so important to put a rag in the crankcase, all these small things. Okay, and that's come out there. Okay, so here are the new parts I purchased from MX Store, about $120 for all of them. So we've got a Vertex piston kit, which is actually genuine, because Vertex make the stock pistons for the KTMs. Spin that, got a new gudgeon pin, new circlips, new ring, obviously a new piston, AB piston, 39.46mm, and a couple of stickers. New bearing, top of the rod, right there, and gasket kit. So head gasket, a few rubber gaskets, all the gaskets we need. So the first thing we're going to do is just install the ring onto the piston. Just going to start it on one side. Just take note of that little indentation coming out. We have to look at that later. And just swing it around, just like that. Click, in we go. Now you'll notice, if they're squeezed in, the piston can't go past, or the ring can't go past that indentation. So that's so the ring can't spin when it's inside the cylinder. See that arrow? That arrow there? That must go towards the exhaust side of the bike. Okay, so installing the Circlips is probably the hardest part of the whole entire job. So to make things a little bit easier, what we're going to do, we're going to install one side of the Circlip here on the bench. So we only have to install the other Circlip when the piston's mounted. So see, I've got it started there. I've got to start it in that little groove there. I've got it started. So what we want to do is use our fingers and our nails and try to squeeze it in. Not going to be able to see. And what you've got to be careful of is that it doesn't go flying out. Because if it goes flying out, good luck finding it. Now see, we've got it in, but see, it's not actually in the groove there. We've got to be very, very aware of this. So what I've got here is a 5/16 socket, and I'm just going to try to give it a tap in with that. Just going to pop it there and just see if I can send it home. There we go, in. So that's a lot easier on the bench than what it is on the bike. That took me about a minute and it wasn't too bad. On the bike, it can be a lot harder. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to replace the needle bearing here. Just going to take that out. That's the old one, and order the new one. So I might as well put it in. That could be. So what I've got here is just some two-stroke oil, and we're just going to cover it in two-stroke oil, so it goes in nice and smoothly. And that should just slide in like that. And there's no play there really at all. It's nice and smooth. Just got the Gudgeon pin on the side of the piston there. Gonna pop it on like that and just send him home. There we go, slide in. Straight in all the way. Just like that. So you've got the arrow there facing this way, the exhaust, and AB facing that way. So now we've probably got the most difficult part of the job, which is installing the Circlip. So you've just got the bottom of the Circlip there sitting in the indentation. We've just got to squeeze it in. There we go. So it's sitting in there. Just put your finger over it, just in case it decides to fly out. I've just got my socket. I'm just going to quickly give it a little push. And just make sure that's sitting in there. So we're going to install the new base gasket there. Just pop that over the studs. Just like that. And pop them in. So now it's going to lube up the piston with some two-stroke oil. I'm going to pop some all over. It's now ready to install the cylinder onto the piston. We're going to squeeze the ring so that it lines up with that divot coming out of the piston, and slide the cylinder on. And there we go. Just slides on like that over the dowels. Now going to loosely put on the cylinder nuts. Okay, so now I'm going to torque the cylinder base nuts. I'm going to go in a crisscross pattern, and the manual calls for 20 Newton meters. So I've got a torque wrench here set on 20 Newton meters, and I'm just going to give them a little bit, just so I can feel a bit of pressure, just like that. And I'm going to go to the other side. Now I'm over here, just a bit of pressure. Now I'll do this one here. So we just slowly get to that 20 Newton meters, which isn't actually that tight at all. We don't want to over tighten them because we could strip the thread or break the stud. That clicks the torque wrench, telling me that's at the 20 Newton meter setting. Just gonna... There we go. So once your cylinder head's all torqued up, it's worth just pushing the kickstarter down a couple of times and just making sure you've got smooth operation. There's no reason you wouldn't, but any major dramas are going to come up pretty quickly while you're pushing the kickstarter over like that. We're now going to install the cylinder head. There's two O-rings here that you could replace. I'm very happy with these ones, so I'm going to leave them in and we're going to try to reuse them. So we've got the cylinder head here and we just got to line it up, these two little dowels here. Just going to pop it on like that, line it up, and that just sits on very nicely, just like that. So now we're going to install the cylinder head bolts again. Now don't forget about these copper washers. Each bolt should have one. So just put them in nice finger tight and now these 5 bolts are to be torqued at 18 Newton meters. So similar to the cylinder itself, the cylinder head we'll try to do up in a crisscross pattern. And there's the final torque there. Go back over and make sure everything is torqued up. So now we're going to replace the radiators. So let's got this side first. Squeeze that over there. And there. We'll place that on there now. And then these line up with the frame points there. Just give it a wiggle. Got the other side here. So I'll pop those in first. Put them in like that. Just like that. And then we'll pop that back onto the bottom of the radiator. Like that. Right up. Just like that. Now we're going to tighten up all the hose clamps. So do them all at once, and that way we won't forget any. Put the shrouds back in. Just like that. And the other side. The exhaust back on, so we're just going to line it up and just give them a wiggle, and it should find its way relatively easy, just like that. You just got the cable tie on the bottom of the spring again, just on the angle. You need a bit of force. Just like that. And obviously your cable tie is stuck there, so you're going to have to cut it off. Now for the other side, new cable tie through the ring, just like that. And just like that. Makes it a lot easier. And now the bolt through this hole into the mount or the bracket. Just like 8mm spanner or socket to tighten. Now you want to refit the fuel tank. So that just slides on like this. Give it a jiggle, you'll find its way home. Single bolt with this rubber on the top and through. Reinstate the seat. Now you want to reconnect the fuel line from the carburetor. This here. Just go back onto the petcock nicely. Just like that. We're now going to reinstate the coolant drain bolt. Screw him back in. I'm not going to put much torque on this, just a little bit. That's plenty. We will put the spark plug cap back on. And now we're just going to add the coolant back. So we have 500ml that came out. So we're going to reuse that. We'll now reinstate the radiator cap. The RFA tube just goes down there like that. And the radiator cap just screws on. Just like that. Okay, so brand new piston rings, fresh top end, full of fuel, bit of choke, but there we go.